Coming up on 5 Minute News. Republicans open inquiry into government weaponization. Alan Weisselberg begins 5-month jail sentence. And WHO recommends masks against new COVID variant. It's Wednesday, January 11. I'm Anthony Davis. The US House of Representatives voted yesterday to launch an investigation into federal law enforcement and national security agencies, as Republicans threatened to scrutinize what they said was a concerted effort by the government to silence and punish conservatives at all levels, from protesters at school board meetings to the disgraced former president Donald Trump. On a party-line vote of 221 to 211, with all Democrats opposed, the House approved the formation of the Select Subcommittee on the Weaponization of the Federal Government, which is to be chaired by Representative Jim Jordan, Republican of Ohio, the incoming chairman of the Judiciary Committee and a staunch ally of Mr. Trump. Mr. Jordan, who was deeply involved with Mr. Trump's efforts to overturn the 2020 presidential election, has for months been investigating what he says is a bias in federal law enforcement against conservatives. Now that Republicans have the majority, he plans to use his gavel and subpoena power to escalate and expand that inquiry, including searching for evidence that federal workers have become politicized, claiming he would be protecting the First Amendment at a time when he said the right was being unfairly targeted. While Republicans have traditionally styled themselves as the party of law and order, in recent years they have contended that law enforcement has treated Mr. Trump unfairly, citing the FBI search of his Mar-a-Lago property for classified White House documents that he did not return for more than a year after leaving office, as required by law. Democrat Representative Jerry Nadler argued that the goal of the panel was to enable the House Republicans to interfere with the free operation of business they do not like, to inhibit the fight against domestic terrorism, and to settle political scores on behalf of Donald Trump. Alan Weisselberg, the longtime executive for Trump's business empire, was taken into custody on Tuesday to begin serving a 5-month jail term for dodging taxes on $1.7 million in job perks, a punishment the judge who sentenced him said was probably too lenient for a case driven entirely by greed. 75-year-old Mr. Weisselberg was promised the short sentence in August when he agreed to plead guilty to 15 tax crimes and to be a witness against the Trump Organization, where he worked since the mid-1980s. His testimony helped convict the former president's company, where he had served as chief financial officer, of tax fraud. But when he made the sentence official on Tuesday, Judge Juan Manuel Merchan said that after listening to Weisselberg's trial testimony, he regretted that the penalty wasn't tougher. He said he was especially appalled by testimony that Weisselberg gave his wife a $6,000 check for a no-show job so that she could qualify for Social Security benefits. Had he not already promised to give Weisselberg 5 months, Merchan said, "I would be imposing a sentence much greater than that. I'm not going to deviate from the promise, though I believe a stiffer sentence is warranted, having heard the evidence," he added. Weisselberg will be eligible for release after little more than 3 months if he behaves behind bars. As part of the plea agreement, Weisselberg was required to pay back nearly $2 million in taxes, penalties and interest, which prosecutors said he has done. Prosecutors said the other Trump Organization executives also accepted off-the-books compensation. Weisselberg alone was accused of defrauding the federal government, state and city out of unpaid taxes and undeserved tax refunds. The Trump Organization itself is scheduled to be sentenced on Friday and faces a fine of up to $1.6 million. World Health Organization officials said on Tuesday that countries should consider recommending that passengers wear masks on long-haul flights, given the rapid spread of the latest Omicron subvariant of COVID-19 in the United States. In Europe, the XBB 1.5 subvariant was detected in small but growing numbers, WHO and Europe officials said at a press briefing. Passengers should be advised to wear masks in high-risk settings, such as long-haul flights, said the WHO's Senior Emergency Officer for Europe, Catherine Smallwood, adding, this should be a recommendation issued to passengers arriving from anywhere where there is widespread COVID-19 transmission. XBB 1.5, the most transmissible Omicron subvariant detected so far, accounted for 27.6% of COVID-19 cases in the United States for the week ended January 7, health officials have said. It was unclear if XBB 1.5 would cause its own wave of global infections. Current vaccines continue to protect against severe symptoms, hospitalization, and death. XBB 1.5 is another descendant of Omicron, the most contagious and now globally dominant variant of the virus that causes COVID-19. It's an offshoot of XBB, first detected in October. More than a dozen countries, including the United States, are demanding COVID tests from travelers from China. You can subscribe to 5-Minute News on YouTube with your preferred podcast app. Ask your smart speaker or enable 5-Minute News as your Amazon Alexa flash briefing skill. Subscribe, rate and review online at 5minute.news. 5-Minute News is an Evergreen podcast covering politics, inequality, health and climate, delivering independent, unbiased and essential world news daily.